Welcome to BQ Prime, Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, who is our guest today. He is the Mission Director for the Atal Innovation Mission at NITI Aayog and is on leave on deputation from MIT Sloan School of Management. Thank you for joining us. You've been here for about 2.5 years or so at the Atal Innovation Mission. What have been the key achievements that you've had, and what have been the main challenges?
So I feel that I think the first thing to appreciate is that building of vibrant national innovation ecosystems is a 30-40 year journey, as we know from most nations that have gone before us in doing this kind of work. So in that sense, I think if I were to look back at my own 2.5 years, first of all, I think India has been at this journey of building a startup ecosystem for the country in a serious way since maybe 2016, when Startup India, Atal Innovation Mission were formed. There were efforts before that through DST, DBT, etc., which created some energy, but now a lot more focus was given to it. And my work in the last 2.5 years has been to land the first phase of establishing Atal Innovation Mission on a solid, serious footing. So when I joined, there were 6,000 Atal Tinkering Labs. Now there are 10,000. That was our mandate. When I joined, there were 68 incubators. There will soon be 100. We've selected them. We are establishing them. That's our mandate, 101 actually. Our mandate is to create 50 Atal community innovation centers. We have 14 now. We would finish 50 this year. And the fourth piece of our mandate was to have 200 Atal New India challenges run. We would finish that also. So in some sense, at one level, delivering on everything that was given to us was one thing that we have ensured. In the process, many of these initiatives have gained significant momentum and also built a brand of sorts. Atal Tinkering Labs, for example, is the world's largest program of its kind in terms of its scale, the 10,000.
What is a Tinkering Lab?
A Tinkering Lab is a maker space. It's a space where someone can build an artifact which may be their imagination when they came in. So these labs have digital fabrication tools like the 3D printers, vinyl cutters, laser cutter, mechanical desk, electronic desk, and these are built in our context. They are built in schools where for 6th to 12th grade students, and there we provide three things: we're making as a skill, design thinking, and entrepreneurship as a skill. And in some ways, in a very simple sense, this is where somebody who would otherwise have been a consumer begins to become a producer of sorts. So it's a very profound shift in a way.
Can you run through the 7 initiatives that you have quickly in sort of layman's words, so that some of them are a little technical or technology based? Can you simplify some of these initiatives?
Yeah, sure. So Atal Tinkering Labs that we were talking about, that is at the youngest age spectrum, in the age spectrum. These are maker spaces in schools. Here, ideas can become products. That's one way to think about it. The second initiative we have is Atal incubation centers. These are typically centers in higher educational institutions, industry bodies, where ideas can become startups. So there, people who come in with ideas are provided different services like helping them build products, build a business model around it, provide mentorship, connect them to investors. It's a space where people can fail safely. The third initiative is community innovation centers. The main reason for this initiative is that there's a lot of regional imbalance. The large cities, Bangalore, Gurugram, Hyderabad, etc. There, building startups, entrepreneurship is easier. But as you go to tier 2, tier 3 towns, it becomes harder. We're trying to bridge that gap by building centers that are community facing. If you travel through India, you will see that you will always meet community level champions, very innovative people. There's no platform to support them. This is a platform that hopes to support them. Fourth initiative is the Atal New India Challenge. Here, ministries give us problem statements, and we run national challenges. We select startups that address those challenges, support them over a year and a half to 2 years with crore and a half rupees to bring them to markets. Because the problem statement has come from the ministry, typically it is a problem where market is not solving that problem.
Can you give an example?
So for example, in many of our cities, that the sewers are cleaned by human beings, what we call the conservancy workers. Every year there are some deaths because of the methane poisoning when somebody enters a manhole. This is something that should be automated. It is not a problem that market is solving on its own. We are running a challenge to solve it. That's one example. For example, the other thing is India, for instance, has 14 or more types of millets. But if you look at post-processing of millets, there's only 1 or 2 types of machines that process it. Although we need a lot of customization there. That's a type of a challenge that we run, for example.
When you say challenge, what do you mean? So it's like a contest or something?
It's a contest. We put out a problem statement and we invite those innovators who may have proved something in the lab, who may have even a small customer base, but they want to scale their solution that addresses this challenge. We invite all such applications. There's an independent jury that looks through it and says, here are few that we should support, and we support them. So that's the fourth.
How do you take them to the market? For example, you have found solutions.
Yeah.
What has been your experience in taking them to the market?
Yes. So generally there are 3 stages if you think about it simplistically. First is, have you proved something in a lab that it works? Second is, have you proved something in the market where it not only works, but some people are willing to buy it and you are able to service it and maintain it and so on for them. So in some ways, it is beginning to look like a full business. And the third is, are you able to scale it? We generally pick up these problems at the level of have you proved it in the lab? And then we give them the tools, we give them hand-holding support. Typically, what we do is we associate them with the Atal incubation centers whose job is to anyway take such ideas forward. They provide them the handholding to demonstrate it in the market. Once they've demonstrated it, then we also organize venues where they can show it to their potential customers. They can show it to the ministries who submitted the problem in the first place. So maybe they will earn a pilot or so with the ministry, so that initial push is given to them. And by then, generally what happens, we sort of, in some ways, around each idea, we build a ecosystem, a micro ecosystem that helps them. And generally what happens is that most successful ideas by then find their connections and they gain momentum and they don't need us anymore, and that's a good thing. But the challenges is our fourth piece. The fifth is Mentor India program, where we have enlisted a large number of professionals from various walks of life to connect them to students, to schools, to startups, who can mentor them and take them forward. Generally, I think one of the things that such a mentor does is it just brings a very different worldview to these people. So that's our fifth program.
Who are some of the well-known mentors that you have?
So I think we have every year we do a Mentor of Change celebration, where mentors are celebrated as recommended by their mentees.
Okay.
But some of the mentors have gone on to give us some really incredible things. So, for instance, in Bangalore, there is Kiran
Kumar.
No, this is Kiran Kumar, who was as such in the industrial sector of Bangalore, like IT sector. But he has given us what we now run is a Tinkerpreneur Marathon every year, where we run a 4 to 5 month program. In fact, this afternoon there is the announcement of the first set of the top winners of the first cut that people will make, and where we give some themes along which students go and look for problems, and they pick a problem and then apply design thinking and come up with a solution. This year's themes, for example, were the G20 themes, and so on. But this format came from a mentor who tried it in their school, and they said this works and we should do it nationwide, and we do it nationwide today. Similarly, when COVID time hit us and we couldn't have done a marathon in person, these mentors were the ones who said that we should build a box. We called it the unbox tinkering, that students can take home and do tinkering, or we should virtualize a lot of these services and so on. So I think the most exciting thing about the mentor program is that the spirit of giving back that you see in many of these mentors. They work so hard, and they don't receive anything in cash for something like this. So it's very fascinating how much of that spirit exists. Very inspiring. One more program, the sixth program we have is it is recently named LIPI, but it started out as Vernacular Innovation Program. India's innovation ecosystem is currently open to only those who are comfortable with English, but only about 11-12% of Indians really speak English, and so this program opens up India's innovation ecosystem to all languages of India. So all 22 official languages. We teach design thinking. We are now working on providing market access, investor access, policy access in people's languages.
Okay.
Because creativity has nothing to do with language. So, and then finally, the seventh program we have is the Ecosystem Development and Partnership Program. We have over 50 partners, about 40 or so domestic large companies trying to work in some or the other part of the ecosystem. About 10 plus are the international companies, etc. They are plugged into bolstering different parts of our ecosystem. So that's sort of the gamut we run.
Despite all these very, very encouraging initiatives that we have, the Global Innovation Index recently ranked India at the 40th place, which is same as the last year.
Yeah.
So where is the lag? At one level, there is a lot of work being done, but on the other level, we don't seem to be making an impact on the ecosystem as far as the index is concerned.
Yeah. So I think the index, there are 2-3 things to understand about it. First is index is our index rank is only as good as the data we can gather and submit about our ecosystem. So I think we have to improve the quality of the data that we submit. Quality, scale and scope of that represents the scale and scope of our ecosystem. That's one part. The second part is there are many things that are happening in our ecosystem that are not fully represented, captured in the GII. For example, the Tinkering Labs we were talking about is the largest program of its kind. If you think about the hunger for innovation in our nation, I think when people from overseas come and go to these places and meet these young children, they really, one of the things that I hear all the time from foreign leaders is that I wish this was there in my country, or I wish this was there when I was a student, or and so I think similarly we have this whole movement of grassroots innovators. Although GII has now accommodated the idea of grassroots, but again we have to submit the data of a very high quality for it to reflect in the index. One final thing is that it will get harder and harder to maintain the rank and move up because the competition now is stiffer. Coming from 81 to 40 is easier than going from 40 to 20. Partly because, imagine a race where there is the giraffe running and a elephant running and a cheetah running and etc. We are an elephant that's trying to now going to have to run at the cheetah's pace. And so I think that's what one will begin to see in terms of sort of maintaining and moving up the rank. The good news is that we've not moved down, but I think we have our work cut out.
You're also the head of the Startup 20 initiative under G20.
Yeah.
What have been the key learnings and innovations from there, and how do you take that forward?
Yeah. So the G20,
especially with regard to India.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that you were asking me earlier, that what has changed since I joined, I think one dimension which has really picked up significantly is the international dimension. We haven't really strategically internationalized our ecosystem yet. But this is the time to start doing it. And I think Startup 20 is a precursor to this, moving in that direction. I think the biggest the biggest change that Startup 20 has brought about or will bring about is in the fact that G20 architecture itself is altered going forward. Until now, all of the business matters were being represented by B20 or the Business 20. And going forward, it will be represented by two groups. The Business 20 will represent corporate issues of large corporations generally, and Startup 20 will represent issues of startups and MSMEs. So that is a big architectural shift. What Startup 20 found were about five things. First, these nations agreed to appealing to the world leaders to help increase the annual funding in the global startup ecosystem to $1 trillion a year, which is about 2.5 to 3 times what it is on average today annually. So that's a big sort of collective statement. Of course, that will have to turn into a platform now that actually, goes and advocates around the world and really and brings in that money. We said that we will, embrace the global frameworks. When we started Startup 20, the first thing we realized was that there was no common definition of startups across the world for legacy reasons. We also realized that we can't impose a common definition, but what we can do is we can provide a definitional framework which allows us to understand each other's definitions so that we know what we are valuing, how to value this entity, and so on. And a governance framework which can be adopted globally for startups to be serious about governance from the early stage, not think of it as a sort of a afterthought. So that's the second piece. The third piece is to create access for startups to global money, markets, talent, and so on. And I think different parts of the world need different things. There are many small countries which are very innovative but have no market of their own, for example. There are many founders around the world who may want to do something advanced in AI or ML or whatever. They have no talent pool to access, and so on. And money, of course, everybody needs. So that is the third piece. Fourth is we set out to say how to build inclusive innovation ecosystems. Again, for underrepresented groups and communities, what inclusion means to different countries is different, but there are many best practices to follow, and we cataloged some. So that's the fourth piece. The fifth piece is to just create mechanisms where we can identify startups of global interest and have a mechanism to scale it globally. Because if SDGs, for example, were to be addressed, we will need all innovations around the world to address them, and can we create mechanisms? So some guidance of that sort. So all of these pieces are put out as a part of the policy communique by Startup 20. In India, what it means is that at least immediately what we are hoping to do is to now package all of that wisdom into offerings that our ecosystem can begin to offer. It can begin to embrace a good governance framework. It can begin to look global. Several incubators do that today, but not all do that. Begin to be conscious about looking global. It can begin to emphasize inclusion much more so than they have so far. It can begin to identify startups that are of global interest and bring it to Startup 20 and say, let's take this global, and so on. So these things will turn into services. And so that's the next step.
But despite all the innovations and the startup activity that we have in the country, there is a problem of unemployment still moving. So where is the gap? Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, there's
multi-dimensional. That's a multi-dimensional problem. But I think if I were to sort of speak about it in the startup ecosystem parlance, then it is essentially a mismatch of job seekers to job creators, if you would. And obviously not everybody is going to be a job creator. But I think we if you look at historically what has happened is that until this point or last few years when we began to be serious about building a platform where innovation and entrepreneurship can thrive, there was not a single there's no institution in our context which promotes risk taking. Families don't promote it, schools don't promote it, academia in general, governments don't promote it, industry also is by and large risk averse, and so it's only been the last few years that we are creating a platform for young people to take risk. And without taking that risk, we will not create more job creators. But that being said, we're still only maybe 1/10 of the way when it comes to the startup ecosystem's journey. Because today India has 100,000 startups. There are 140 crore people, which means there is one startup for 14,000 citizens. If you look at startup nations like Israel, there's one startup for 1,400 citizens. But they've been at it for 30-40 years. We've been at it for a shorter period. But if you make an assumption that we have as much brains as anybody else, then I think we will get there. But it'll take time, and I think we're in the early stages. If you look at the overall employment created by startups, for example, in 100,000 startups, and one startup on average employs 10 to 11 people. I'm being generous, but so 100,000 startups employ 1 million people. That's probably smaller than the software industry at the moment. So they have done job creation, but it will take us much more effort for them to become a serious integrated part of the economy.
The other thought that comes to me in this context is that, is it a problem of globalization? You spoke about internationalization of startups. So therefore, best practices come in terms of valuation, in terms of attracting people, etc. But India as a country, its priorities are at the grassroots level, are at employment creation level. Is there a mismatch between the practices of global natured startups and our own problems?
So we have always had to we've always had to be a nation that runs in two gears simultaneously. Of course, our own challenges of inequity and job creation and all of that are there, but at the same time we've always had global aspirations, and there's definitely a segment that is in a way global in their experience, outlook, capability, etc. So I think even in the startup world you see that in areas like e-commerce and fintech and so on. I think our firms are far more global. Their outlook is global, the way they are structured is global, all of that. on the many other fronts where we have to to address our own opportunities and challenges, agriculture, water, housing, energy, environment, etc. There I think there's something very interesting happening. One is many of our people, their context is the local problem, so that's where they start. But then soon they realize that this is actually a global problem, and the solutions they arrive at are typically very affordable solutions because that's the context they are addressing, and the world needs that same solution. But unless you have thought about it from the perspective of being global from the get-go, you may not have structured yourself as such. That is the piece we're trying to change, for example, through something like Startup 20, because there's no, as a thought experiment, there is nothing preventing you from thinking global, even if you are addressing a local problem.
One final question. You have graduated in Indian classical music.
Yeah.
Has that helped you as a practitioner of innovation? Because that's essentially creativity.
That's a very good question. Yes, it has helped me in a couple of ways. I can say from reflection. First, classical music or arts has it keeps you movable from the inside. For example, when I walk into a room and there is a Hir Bhairav being played, raga, I have a it transforms my mood to a happy morning mood because of this training. Or if I walk into a room and the Bari is being played, it transcends me into a very somber, serious mood, and that ability to be moved instantly is something that I attribute to my training in arts. And I think because empathy is so fundamental to innovation, that training I feel helps with empathy. The other piece that I have realized is also that because I can think in music, there are many times the problems when I translate it into the musical paradigm to understand the problem. A lot of times people will say, oh, you can't have structure and creativity at the same time. No, why can't you have it? Our ragas have always had structure and yet creativity. And so these metaphors are in some ways being able to use these metaphors interchangeably is something that's helpful because of musical training.
Thank you, Dr. Chintan.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.